Ladies and gentlemen, collegiate entrepreneurs from around the globe, please join your hands together in welcoming to the main stage your Executive Director, James Zabrowski.
Pretty much amazing. Can we get a new song, please? I got you. Hey, yo, I once was a kid, all I had was a dream.
Good morning, CEO. How are we today? No, that's not enough energy. Let's really hear it. How are we this morning, CEO Nation? There we go. Very, very good. Well, so my name is James Zabrowski. I serve as your executive director, and the main takeaway that I want to leave with you is that my entire team is here to service you. So if there's anything that we can be doing to further improve your time here in Tampa or the programming on your individual campuses, please do not hesitate to talk with me or any of my team members. Our full purpose is to support the efforts of the creation of the entrepreneurial community on you and your individual campuses. So a big round of applause for all of our chapter presidents, vice presidents, faculty advisors, and all of the leaders that help make this possible. So this weekend is packed full of networking, interactive seminars, investors, a $15,000 pitch competition, special guests such as AWS Startups, chapter awards and recognition, the Venture Valley Esports Tournament, an entrepreneurship simulation challenge, and of course, the most important part of our organization, our members. I want all of you to know how excited we are to have you here in Tampa. For those of you who have braved this current climate and are returning to in-person events for the very first time, welcome back. As with all things, entrepreneurs tend to be the first. I am proud to say that we have more than 450 aspiring entrepreneurs that have registered for this conference. And we are just really, really grateful for you to come out here and be a part of what we've put together for you. The planning for CEO Global is a very grueling process, but we're very happy to do it each and every year, and I want to be the very first to welcome you to our 38th annual CEO Global Conference. Let's hear it. At this time, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of our judges, our speakers, and sponsors. Our entire speaker lineup is full of volunteers. If you can believe it, everybody is here on their own dime supporting you and your inspiration and motivation to become an entrepreneur. And of course, this event would not be possible if it were not for the many sponsors that support Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization. That includes the University of Tampa, Marketplace Simulations, Hillsborough County, the John E. and Jeanne Hughes Foundation, the Singleton Foundation for Financial Literacy and Entrepreneurship, Amazon Web Services, Wave Builder, Visit Tampa Bay, Propel the World, the University of Florida, Texas Christian University, the Rice Alliance, and AAA. CEO has very strong partnerships. These partners provide resources, connections, and mentors to our organization. The following partners are unendingly supportive of CEO, and we are so thankful for their in-kind contributions. These include the Association for Entrepreneurship, Chick-fil-A, Delta Airlines, American Airlines, Marriott, J. Thor Productions, the City of Tampa, Embark Collective, Entrepreneurs Organization, Future Founders, the Global Consortium of Entrepreneurship Centers, Law Cloud, Self-Employment in the Arts, Sigma Nu Tau, WeFunder, Startup Island, Harness, the American Business Journals, United States Association for Small Business and Entrepreneurship, the Department of State for the United States of America, and the Women's Business Enterprise National Council. All of our partners are equally important, but at this time, I would like to feature one that stands out above the rest. As you can see, Harness is a phenomenal tool for you as you continue to support the communities of entrepreneurs on your campus, and I'm happy to announce that if you join the Harness waiting list, this software is available to your campus free of charge. So that is an incredible value. Many of these programs cost upwards of $15,000 to $20,000 to support and create an individual community. And what I love about Harness is it removes barriers between campuses for entrepreneurs. So mentors at one campus can help support entrepreneurs from another, and student entrepreneurs can help support each other individually. I'm so proud of what they've developed, and they have a tremendous amount of investor support to help significantly continue to build a meaningful virtual platform for all of our community members. I'm really looking forward to interacting with each of you throughout the duration of this conference. I know I'm running around doing a lot of things, but please stop and chat with me and my entire team throughout the program. As a CEO chapter president, during my time, I firmly believed that the best way to engage with your individual chapter was to plug in, engage, and this organization would really help you soar. And I believe that to be very true today. I think what you put into CEO is what you're going to get out of it, and I'm so proud of everything that you've all accomplished. On Saturday afternoon, the president of Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization and our membership coordinator, Giles Hertz, and Dean Messick, myself, will be hosting a chapter organization update. So we're inviting all of our chapter presidents to join us for that discussion on Saturday evening. Of course, apart from all of our donors, partners, and supporters, there are two organizations that we work with very closely to support the development of this program. At this time, I'd really like for everybody to show a round of applause for DeMars Meetings and Events Agency and J. Thor Productions for everything that you see in front of them, because none of it would be possible without them. So at this time, I would like to introduce you to Ryan Groves. Ryan is the MC for this year's conference, and he's the head of entrepreneurship at the Singleton Foundation for Financial Literacy. Ryan, an incurable optimist, is the MC for our 2021 Global Conference and is an experienced entrepreneur and educator with a deep background in venture-backed startups, tech, and social enterprise. He holds a master's in social entrepreneurship from Pepperdine University, and he founded his first company, Wishing Well, as a sophomore in college, a true collegiate entrepreneur. Wishing Well provided clean water for more than 40,000 people by the time he graduated. In his current role, he directs Singleton's Foundation's initiatives to support and empower entrepreneurs nationwide. There is nothing he loves more than helping good people do great things. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the stage Ryan Groves.
Good morning. Morning, hi. I met a few of you yesterday, but for those who didn't, my name's Ryan. Nice to meet you. And let's try this again. What was your name? All at once. 1, 2, 3. What's your name? Great, we've all met. I'm glad the pleasantries are out of the way. So now that I know your name, my next question is this. What are you guys doing Tuesday? Are you free? Do you have breakfast, lunch plans? Can we get something on the calendar? I don't mean to be awkward, but what I'm getting to is this. We have 2 days. We do not have a lot of time. And we have to make the most of that very, very precious amount of time with a lot of really, really incredible people. You'll be hearing phenomenal ideas, making some great connections. That's wonderful. But don't miss this. The people you meet here in these 2 days could change your life, could change millions of lives. But it's going to depend on your intentionality with it. That's the energy, the impetus I wanted us to start with. I know that we could have like a huge rah-rah moment and get up, we could dance around. That's great. All that will come. But I don't want us to miss the moments, the importance of this, the significance in your life that it can play, because we are trying to do great things, not small things. We're trying to do huge things. Our theme is becoming agents of change. Again, no small things here. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying like you have to be going for a $1 billion startup versus starting a local bakery. That's not what I mean. Those are both big things in their own right. But here's why they're both big things, and why I want us to begin with this intentionality of who are we? Why are we in this space together? There's a group of about 17 people who are the most successful social innovators, entrepreneurs, policymakers in human history, and I bet you don't know about them. They ended 80% of the world's slave trade without a shot fired in 10 years. I bet you never heard their names. in London. It was about, let's see, late 1700s. You had these two little boys, 11 and 13, who went to go visit their aunts and uncles in London for the summer, and along the way, like, found themselves in like a little Sunday school class where they met this like old monk who was saying like, hey, you should make the world a better place. You should live your life in a way where it's like, go out there, love people, that'll change things. And so like, that's a pretty good idea, but they're little boys. So they went back to their neighborhood, and they lived in this little neighborhood called Clapham, west of London, like their names, especially William Wilberforce. So William Wilberforce, the younger one, and William Pitt, his slightly older friend. And they went back to that neighborhood. What made that neighborhood so remarkable, and this is a little tiny town outside of London, is they ate dinner together twice a week, every Tuesday and every Thursday. And they would talk about life, they'd talk about the world, they'd talk about their place in it. They would invite people who didn't have food to just come and join them. But they just lived in community. Now here's what's crazy about that. This wasn't super rich, wealthy elites or super brilliant, well-educated people. This is a tanner and his two sons, a widow, like an old preacher. It was just a neighborhood. But they shared life together, and they shared it intentionally. And through a wild series of events, something happened in 1796 that kind of rocked Britain. I wonder what it was. But a few things happened, and through a crazy series of events, those two little boys, when they grew up at 24 and 26, wound up in Parliament, just a few years older than you. At 26, the older one of the two, William Pitt, became the prime minister. He was in charge. He was running Parliament. And he turned and looked at his friend, and he said, hey, remember when we talked about how we should live our lives to make the world a better place? And you and I have always talked about the slave trade, and man, that's not right. We should fix that. And he wrote to his friend, Wilbur, we are too young to know that things are impossible, so let's do them anyways. And so with the support of those 17 people, they started a movement. In a time when democracy was basically treasonous, they went town to town, getting people to sign a petition, be like, yeah, we don't believe in the slave trade. And they started this huge social movement, and they got people inspired, they got them revved up, but they were smart too. They wrote policy. They snuck policy into different bills. They created new business dealings. They shifted the way that trade was done. They used every tool at their disposal. And again, in 10 years, without a shot fired, 17 people from a random neighborhood just outside of London ended the slave trade for the entire British Empire. And if that was it, we could celebrate, we could cheer, and that'd be nuts. And we should model whatever they did, because that's pretty effective. But there's two things about this story that are really, really cool. First is this. I love it because I just have to throw this in there. This story isn't, I don't mean this about any sort of religion or faith or anything like that, but just as like wonderful, good principles. But that Sunday school preacher they had, and you'll love this, he was actually a slave ship captain for 27 years. And, found a religion, came into a better state of being. He became, little monk. And as he was going blind teaching Sunday school, he taught these two little boys, William Wilberforce, William Pitt. And when they passed the legislation to end the slave trade, he was there to hear the gavel hit to say it's over. As he was going blind, you might know his name. His name was John Newton. And after he found religion and was going blind, he wrote a song about how he once was blind but now could see. And that's who trained the two young people who grew up and who were too young to know it was impossible. So they went and did it anyways. And they knocked it out. That's cool. That's significant. And that's the type of connection we can have here today. And here's the second thing I want to say. The Clapham sect, that small group of people in committed relationship, if they adjusted to the slave trade, excellent. But they championed and won on over 70 different social issues. Prison reform, welfare reform, education reform, women's rights, animal cruelty laws, you name it. They could take on anything and win. And why was that? How many of you have heard Simon Sinek start with why? Anybody? One of the most successful TED Talks of all time. Okay, let's recap it really quick. Simon Sinek, this wonderful business author and speaker, he has this idea that great visionary leaders begin with why. That's what they sell with. And he has these 3 concentric circles: why, how, what. And for those of you who haven't seen it, let's walk through it. So you have your what. We're all familiar with that. That's your product. So he uses the analogy of like, how does Dell sell a product? Well, Dell begins with, we have a product that's, an excellent computer, beautifully designed, simple to use. Their how. We do this through excellent machining and manufacturing and brilliant design and people. And then the why. Well, the why was kind of missing from Dell's messaging. It was just here's a transaction, the classic business game. We're all really familiar with that. Now, meanwhile, Apple, they flip this and they begin with the why. Everything we do, we put a ding in the universe. We want to challenge the status quo. We do this by making products that are simply designed, easy to use, brilliant people made them, etc. Just the same as Dell. It just happens to make a great whatever we want to sell you. Apple, watch, computer, phone, go for it. And so people resonate with that why. Now, this is a really, really common thing, and I understand the why, but I want to push back on Clapham's sect. It wasn't just about ending the slave trade. It was about who are we in relationship to each other? What is the world that we want to create? That's what's important. Because I know 100% of the time, if I change where you belong, I change what you believe. And that belonging, that is the most powerful driver of human creative cognitive behavior, period. Every shred of research we have says yes, like Daniel Pink on Drive, like the secrets of what really motivates you to do great, wonderful, creative things, autonomy, mastery, purpose. Those are the 3 he quotes in his book. He's actually stealing from a piece of research, and what he left out was oh, by the way, but if you belong somewhere, you can dream up worlds together. You can launch companies, you can create products, you can tackle causes, you can do whatever, but do you belong? That's what matters. And I think it's no mistake that if you look back over the last 100 years, the 2 most successful authors, C.S. Lewis, J.R. Tolkien, and their buddies, Owen Barfield, Charles Williams, Dorothy Sayers, they met every Tuesday and Thursday for a drinking group at a pub just out of Oxford. They were nobodies at Oxford. They're in the medieval literature department. Who here hangs out at your medieval literature department at your school? Nobody. But that's where they came from, and they wrote the books, Chronicles of Narnia, Lord of the Rings, etc., that rocked the world. This is the most widely selling books for the last 100 years. Incredible influence. They met every Tuesday and Thursday. You look at the Skull and Bones, this infamous secret society, getting all sorts of brilliant people doing all sorts of incredible things. U.S. presidents, senators, Fortune 500 CEOs, dignitaries, you name it. Well, what's their strategy? They say, hey, you 7, you're seniors. We're going to invite you into something. Welcome to the family. Here's the plan. You're going to eat dinner together twice a week. You're going to come together and share your story. And we're going to knit you together so close you can't help but change the world. That's the plan. So yes, we all came here with ideas, brilliant ideas, but don't sacrifice the people because of the ideas. This is a game we're playing. Entrepreneurship is a game. We get to dream up how the game works because business is about people, not the other way around. And that's not just the good way to do business, that's the best way to do business. It's the most powerful way. 1920 at Yale, Sir John Marks Templeton gave the graduation speech. And keep in mind, at the time, only about 3% of people got to go to college. And here's one of the most successful entrepreneurs of all time giving this talk, and he gets up and says, "You've all been sold half the truth. The vast majority of activity in a free market society is not competition, but cooperation." This is about the relationship. This is about the conversation. It's about who we're helping, but it's also about who's speaking into you. What's that group you belong to? Do you want to have influence? Create that place where people can belong. Look at TED. Just like what James is saying, we're all here sharing this moment. We're all here for free. It's great, but think about it. TED, most brilliant people, most amazing ideas, everybody's speaking for free. You would think on the books, that's not how that works. But TED figured out, like John Maxwell said, the great leadership author, there's these 3 levels of influence. The bottom, you've got your salesman, your entrepreneur. They're getting the foot in the door. They're pitching the idea. At the contest later today, I'll be judging some of you. Get on it. At your second level, you've got your influencer, your celebrity, the person on stage in the spotlight. That's great. That's definitely influence there. But finally, the highest place, the greatest place of influence you could ever hope to achieve, can you create the place where the conversation happens? 1 billion people right now watch a TED Talk every year. There's never been a conversation in human history like this. There's 1,000 whys, 1,000 whats, people of all shapes and sizes participating in this. What they did was create the space, give the permission. To take it one further in your own lives as you go back and we think about what are you doing Tuesday? who are those people that are in your circle, where when this idea goes up or down, they're still in your back corner? When 10 years from now, one of you finally gets the big win, the big round, needs to know, who can I trust, who can help me pull off that big thing, because our lives aren't small and these things really matter. Who can you call? Martin Luther King Jr., when he was young, your age, he was at a conference, not unlike you, where he met another person who was young, your age, named Mahalia Jackson. Anybody here know Mahalia Jackson? Oh, come on, you guys. Yes, thank you. Yes, of course you do. Mahalia Jackson, like one of the most famous gospel singers of all time. Google her. It's great. It's good music. It'll be good for you. But they met at a conference just like this, and they became friends. And they stayed in touch. They didn't have email. They didn't have Twitter. But they would write letters. They would call each other. And over the next 10, 15 years, they just formed this friendship. And in fact, when Martin Luther King Jr. would get sad, when he'd get depressed, when he was coming out of jail, and he's like, I'm just up against the world. What can I do? He would call Mahalia, and he would say, can you just sing to me? And she'd sing to him over the phone. And they built this friendship. And so if you go listen to the I Have a Dream speech on the steps of the National Mall, which all of us should do for sure, but don't just listen to the little clip. Listen to the whole thing. The beginning's super boring. It's really great. He's saying brilliant stuff, but it's a very academic speech. He gets up there. He's prepped for this moment. He has a script. He's sticking to it. And about halfway through the speech, there's a pause. And if you turn up the volume, you will hear in the background this strong, wiry voice, this woman shout out, tell him about the dream. Tell him about the dream, Martin. And in that moment, in front of 250,000 people with the world on his shoulders, two things had to happen. One, Mahalia had to know her friend well enough to know that he was about to miss his shot. It was going to be gone. This is the moment. Don't you dare miss that. I can't stand to miss it. I've got to say something because I'll be heartbroken if this doesn't happen. And the second, he had to know her well enough to, out of a crowd of 250,000 people, say, that's Mahalia. She's right. And he steps back, drops the script, shifts tone, changes the world. But that took 10, 15 years of relationship. All of you are going to have multiple brilliant ideas, great pitches, great plays. But it's not about the pitch, the play. It's not about the structure, the forms, the techniques. Entrepreneurship is jazz. You have to know music theory better than the people playing classical music. You have to know music theory well enough to bend it and break it and create it at your will. And the best thing about jazz is shared. It's about the people. It's about the relationship. Miles Davis was great, not because of his technical ability, which is astounding, but he was great because all the other players, when you play with him, they'd say, you couldn't play a wrong note with Miles Davis. Whatever you played, he would play something that made what you played wrong right. That's what we're doing. But that takes relationship. That takes an awareness of the moment. That takes the application of the tools. At the Singleton Foundation, where I serve as head of entrepreneurship, we are dreaming about how do we empower literally millions of entrepreneurs. Millions, nationwide, worldwide. How do we get everybody to understand there is a game that is being played, and this world will be better if we all understand how to play it? How do we make people agents of change? Because if they understand how to harness their ideas, their creativity, their power, their life, not only will this world be a better place, because by the very nature of entrepreneurship, we are finding problems and solving them. And if everybody knows how to do that, this world won't just be better for the world, it'll be better for them. What an awesome way to live life. What an adventure to be a part of. That's what I'm after. That's what we're all after, aren't we? That place to belong, that group of good people going and doing great things. What else could we want? Yes, make the money. Get the IPO. Don't get me wrong, that's killer. That's a result. And I know lots of those people who are successful, and they'll even say, like, yes, that's great, but I'm still excited about life. I'm still excited about the adventure. So we're talking about all of our ideas and all this business. We're learning great things from all these wonderful people this week. Don't miss this moment. Don't miss this moment to think, to learn, to connect. Look at everyone you meet with an eye on what might happen next. And create that. Give the space for it. Create the place where people can belong. And the world is yours. That's why I'm excited about this week. Because we have the opportunity to have that conversation here over the next 2 days. So let's totally dive into that. All right. I'm Irish, so I have to, not Irish by nationality, but Irish by descent. So I'll claim it. I can't do an accent, so I'm not even going to try. I'm a Kansas farm boy. Let's make this clear. But I'll end this with a toast, and then we're going to shift into our first speaker. A toast and a blessing for you. Whatever we give to our friends is beyond fortune's power. Nothing you've given away will ever be lost. Whatever we give to our friends is beyond fortune's power. Nothing you give away will ever be lost. That's the best ROI you can imagine right there. And speaking of ROI, I'm really, really excited to introduce our first keynote speaker to kick off the event. She told me to introduce her as just an entrepreneur, but I can't. She's too much. There's too much energy there. There's too much joy. Literally, there's too much joy. So here, if I may. So our first speaker, Joy, she launched, I've got to read this here, the first of 14 ventures at age 17. So for those of you keeping track, you might need to keep up. 9 successful acquisitions and 2 IPOs later, not only is she a successful entrepreneur, but I think she is a brilliantly successful human and a joy to be with, and somebody who, yes, knows how to build a business, but more than that, understands how do you work with people? How do we create the connections? How do we form the bonds? How do we be strategic? Because we are building something so great. So without further ado, if I may, please help me welcome to the stage our first keynote speaker, Joy.
Baby, how you feeling? Woo, child, tired of the bullshit. Gone, dust your shoulders off. Keep it moving, yes, Lord. Trying to get some new shit in.
Good morning, everyone. How are you? So, this saying is really important to me, and I'm going to actually key on some of the things that Ryan said because we had an interesting conversation earlier. So, this is a phrase. It's actually on my office wall, and it's also on a brick in Centennial Park in Atlanta. I'm from Atlanta originally, so I actually am pretty familiar with the whole Martin Luther King thing. If no one has ever read his book, you definitely should do that in addition to watching, the speech. So, part of what we talked about was how do we build a billion-dollar company? I did launch a bunch of companies, so you can see some of the names up here. The things on the left-hand side are companies that were mine or companies that bought mine, and I stayed at for a period of time. On the right are the things I'm sort of doing today. I'm not going to talk about all of them because we don't have a year, but what I will talk about is the ones that went to $1 billion. So I'm a big believer, and there's no winners and losers. When you lose, you learn. So we're all going to make mistakes. You're going to screw up royally. I've screwed up royally. It's part of life. Don't beat yourself up about it. So one of the things that we have in the startup world is a lot of hype, right? Like right now, it's super cool. Like for the last few years, it's been really awesome to be an entrepreneur. For decades, people are like, entrepreneur, you're crazy. Like you're nuts. You should go get a real job. I'm quite sure that's what my dad would have told me. Considering he worked for the same company for his whole life after, he came out of the Marine Corps. But in reality, kind of how we build these businesses is really about the culture. It's about the people at the end of the day. So what would you say if I asked you, how many people in the room actually have a company today or are building a company today? Raise your hands. Okay. If you looked back, right, if you read my little bio and you said, she sold a company for $1.5 billion, she had another one for $1 billion, she raised $500 million in capital, a lot of people would say those are great accomplishments, right? But I don't really think they are. I think anyone who has the tenacity and who is reasonably intelligent could do those things. What I would tell you is my greatest accomplishment is all about people. My greatest accomplishment is the people that have worked for and with me, throughout my career, have started 63 new companies. They're hiring tons of people, they're building things, they're doing things to change the world. That's a much greater accomplishment than raising a bunch of money and getting your name in the paper, or than taking a company public. It just is. So I'm going to talk like 2 seconds about capital because I kind of hate this conversation, even though I get to talk about it all the time. I will tell you 2 things about venture capital. Be very careful who you take money from, because it can make or break your company. Taking money from the wrong people will absolutely kill your company, and be very conscious of how much time you spend on this, because it is a full-time job. So there are actually only 4 things that determine the valuation of your company. And by valuation, it doesn't matter whether it's being acquired or whether you're getting money put into it. There are 4 types of capital: customers and the diversity of your customer base, so that you're not relying on one person. The people that you hire, the people that run your company, your co-founders. And structural capital, which is the processes that exist inside of your company, and the fact that they're documented and they can be repeatable without you. And social capital, and that is the value of the relationships that you have, whether they be with your customers, with your employees, how you're viewed in the world, what your brand is about, those type of things. And those are what really matter at the end of the day. So what makes a great founder? Mark Andreessen has a saying, and he says, great founders are only about genius and courage. Well, I call BS on that. Those things are definitely needed, although there's a lot of founders that aren't a genius that do things well. It's more about how you think. I also think there's 2 really critical things, and that is leadership and how you make decisions. So these skills really do matter at the end of the day, right? And I'm going to key on just what a couple of those actually are. So courage. If you saw when we started, I worked at Apple. It's my very first real job in my career. I worked directly for Guy Kawasaki, and I would consider myself blessed to have done that. I didn't work for Jobs, I didn't work for Woz, but I did get to spend some time with Steve Jobs. Everybody in the room has a smartphone today, right? Apple was the first smartphone, the iPhone. Anybody have any idea when that idea came to be or how that happened? How many of you think you do? What do you think? Nope. But interesting, you're on the right track. So Jobs had this vision. If you go back, and you can probably find it somewhere on the internet, there's a Pixar film where it shows Jobs like waking up in the morning, and this was filmed inside of a Pixar studio. And he's talking to a screen on the wall, and the wall, this is responding back to him as if we're having a real conversation with some entity that's out there. And he believes that this is the future. Just as an FYI, that was 1992. In 1993, Apple released a product called the Newton. You probably have to Google that to find it. I had one of those. It's the very first device that you would hold in your hand that actually was a computer and had cellular connectivity. It didn't go well. And Jobs really went out on a limb to actually make that happen. People inside the company thought he had lost his mind. It's like we're making boatloads of cash over here. Why would you go that way? But that was what led to, okay, that didn't work. How do I take parts of this? Well, let's re-engineer an MP3 player and turn it into an iPod. And then we'll make that as small as we possibly can so we can figure out what kind of things need to sit in the form factor. How do people use it? How do they engage with it? We have these phones that you carry around that are giant, right? Let's see if we can actually blend those technologies. So could we take what we had back in the day and what we've learned from building an iPod and turn it into something that was a phone? And so that's actually how that happened. So I would say that leads to vision. So when you think about vision, at least for me, one of the questions you have to ask yourself is like, what are you not doing? Not what are you doing? You can be super busy all day long, but what are you not doing, right, at the end of the day? And I think that if I look at my own history, I would say the things that we did that we had vision for. Cheyenne Software, which is a very boring thing, right, but got bought for $1.5 billion, so you can call it boring if you want. Boring things make lots of money at the end of the day. We had some other products though. So while the main product was actually backup and disaster recovery software. We had 80% market share when CA bought us for $1.4 billion. We had taken the company public before then, overcome a hostile takeover. I testified in front of the SEC. It was super fun. But the other things that we had was we had created the first commercially available anti-malware tool and the first commercially available fax tool. That was kind of crazy, right? We didn't have to do that. We didn't have to go there because we were just growing, we were making money. But that's about vision. The other thing is I created the first mobile content delivery network. Every one of you has a phone today. 87% of the content that's delivered to you on the internet comes through Akamai Technologies. Our technology is what sits at the edge of those servers, and every time you pull something up on your phone that's a website, that's us. We did this at a time where there was no one really doing it. And we're like, what's the future going to be? And we actually called it Web 3.0. So it was very interesting kind of how we came about that. We created a company of mine called Highwall, which ended up being a miserable failure, by the way. We patented and created a device that would do wireless detection throughout. It would take 2 devices in this whole building to detect everything wireless in it. That's how brilliant it was. X-Harris engineers, really, really good. But this is where your team, when they are not the right team, can kill something. So I would say the other thing that's really critical is being self-aware. The reason being self-aware matters is because you as the leader, if you don't understand where you're strong or where you're weak, and even for your people, you're not going to perform particularly well. Excuse me. So I'm an ENTJ. Any of you know about Myers-Briggs? Less than 4% of the population in the world are ENTJs. And 0.02% of females are ENTJs. I'm a DI. I'm an Aries. My little Ikigai says that I need to be a CEO. If you haven't ever done the Ikigai thing, I would argue that it's a great way to figure out like what your purpose really is in life. But understanding who you are will let you know how you help make up your team. What do you do? And if you don't understand yourself, you're never going to be able to be self-aware. That plays into your EQ. So how many of you guys know what EQ is versus IQ? Okay. If you don't know what your EQ is, please Google that and understand what that is, because it is more critical than your IQ to your success, and I'm not kidding. The other thing I would say is communication. And so communication is really about meeting people where they are. So if you look at like leadership styles and all the things like that, I'll give you an idea. So time is of the essence when you're communicating. So I'll give you some real world examples. I used to have calls with my key people every morning. They lasted 5 minutes. When you're a founder of a startup and you're traveling, you're out and you're in front of customers, you don't have a lot of time. So literally I would do it in my car. Everybody gets 5 minutes, let's go. And the whole crux of that conversation is, what is impacting your ability to move forward today? What do you need help with? Your job as the leader is to remove obstacles. That is your job, right? If you've sold the vision, if you've taught people to understand and do it with a story, people don't get behind products, they get behind visions. It is about building a team. It's about bringing those people together. It is about belonging, as Ryan talked about. You want people, and I always kind of use this analogy of that will bleed alongside of me. Because Sean Parker, if you guys don't know who Sean Parker is, he was the founder of Napster and the first president of Facebook, actually. He has a saying, running a startup is very much like eating glass. You just eventually learn to like the taste of your own blood. There's going to be a lot of things that won't get you, it's the truth, right? You're going to get punched a lot. It's not super easy. That's not how things work. But if you have people that are going to be there with you, and the way to get that is to be transparent, to communicate openly. You'll never be able to share everything, and that's okay. That's not your job. But you want to be as transparent as you possibly can. You want to act with integrity, right? Choosing courage, right? Making the decisions and being open and honest. Every time you do that and you succeed, you build more courage. And courage is really a requirement in kind of how you go about doing this. I've overcome a hostile takeover. I actually ended up testifying against one of my co-founders in a court of law because I was unwilling to act without integrity. And I walked away in that particular scenario from 1.7 million shares of a company that could have been bought for $100 million. So that's hard. Financially, that's hard to do that. But I got to sleep at night, and I feel like a better person for it. If I picked one thing out of these other things, so communication and integrity, being authentic, those really matter. It's tenacity. It takes a lot of work, and you're not going to have things happen always the way you want. But tenacity to me equals relentless execution. And if you think about that, right, it's pulling those pieces, your vision, your alignment, your accountability, into a rhythm that allow you to keep going and keep going and keep going and always asking, like, how do I get to the next step? You know, at Cheyenne, we went through a product scenario. How many of you guys understand software development, how many versions you go through? We went to version 5.01G. Now, for people who don't understand that, that's really bad. And we kept having problems. We ended up, if you want to understand like how our people felt and why we were this band of brothers, our engineers slept under their desks to get this right. They worked that many hours. There's a reason that people at Apple work 18-hour days and they're happy about it. It's because they believe in the bigger vision for where the company is going. They believe they're actually doing something good in the world. And that was really telling for me. By the way, after we fixed the problem, we took everybody to Hawaii. And they deserve to go to Hawaii at the end of the day. When we talk about people, you know, if you build a team with the right people, if you treat your people well, there's a reason that all these people have come to work for me in other companies, and it wasn't because, you know, I'm brilliant. It wasn't any of those things. It's because of how I treated them as human beings. It's because I valued their opinions. I listened to what they have to say, even if I disagree. And as a CEO, I will tell you that even if you already know what your decision is going to be or think that you know, listen anyway. Listen because you want people to know that they have the right to express themselves, even if you're going to make a different decision. Because when people don't feel valued, they will leave. You'll learn a lot about people as you work with them. There are two of my friends who are CTOs. One is deceased, he actually, you know, which is terrible. But Adrian, we hired Adrian Vega, who is my CTO at Business Layers. We brought Adrian, he was Eric Schmidt's right-hand guy. So it's pretty good. Me, him, and 4 Israelis founded a company. I would work with Adrian again on any project. It wouldn't matter what it was. I don't care. My other CTO, Martin, who we built at Velocitude and sold that company, I would do the same thing with him. He could call me tomorrow and say, hey, Joy, I want to build a dog food company. I'd be like, okay, let's go. And it's because I know how that person thinks. I know what their values are. I understand what it's going to be like to work beside of them. And that's how we build culture. So I'll give you an idea on culture, just a couple of really quick ones. And when I talk about your EQ and those kind of things, being supportive, being success is really what people need. As a leader, you have to learn to live vicariously through the success of others, right? When it's just you, it's all about you building things, but as soon as you have to lead a group of people, you don't get to be the person who's successful anymore. You'll become successful by making them successful. Michael Dell, Ryan mentioned Dell. How many of you guys know that Michael Dell has gone through taking his company public, private, public? He's also nearly went bankrupt to the point of couldn't have anybody, like people weren't going to show up to work. You know what Michael Dell did then to show people that they were going to have a job the next day? Every 2 weeks, he went to the bank and collected all the money to pay his people. And he stood at the door as they exited the company, and he handed them their money in cash. People might think that's crazy, but it showed them that he cared and that he was in there with them and that they could trust him. So those kind of things really, really matter at the end of the day. When I talked about your customers, the customers is the other thing that is really, really important. You want to have raving fans, and if Apple didn't do anything right other than that, their customers are raving fans. They're addicted, almost. I'm wearing my iWatch, I have an iPad, I have a Mac, I have everything. I love the fact that it's a closed ecosystem. I'm also a cybersecurity practitioner, and I've worked in cybersecurity since before it was called cybersecurity and built multiple companies in that realm. But it's really about knowing your customers. So I don't care what it is that you build, it doesn't matter. It's understanding the motivation for your customer. They really don't care about you in the beginning. They care about what you're doing. What is it that you're doing that's of value to them? How are you solving their problem? And the other thing as a founder is continuous learning. Don't ever stop learning. I learn stuff every day. I learned stuff here today. I learned stuff from Ryan this morning. We're having a conversation, and I will learn stuff from you guys today as we go through. Don't be afraid to fail. We're all going to fail. Failure is just a learning experience. We were talking earlier today. I learned from one of my first companies how to write my contracts for my next company. I learned why you want a trade secret policy from day one. How many of you would give up 10% of your company on the first day? Cool, you're smart. We gave up 10% of Velocitude on day one. We handpicked a board of directors, and we gave each one of them 1.5% equity, straight up, just like us. The board of directors we picked were people that we knew, but we were picking them for very specific reasons. And we were pretty lucky that they said yes. They made introductions for us that really mattered. So Wayne Huizinga Jr. was on my board, the former CEO of AutoNation, the former CEO of Blockbuster Video, Neil Markham of Markham Racklin Accounting, and Craig Farley of Farley Turner private equity firm. These guys allowed us, in conjunction with the relationships that we had, 3 of us were previous founders, the other one wasn't. We got 28 of the Fortune 500 and IR 500 as clients in 6 months. And we did that we didn't even build the product before we got started. We asked questions. We said, if we build this, will you buy it? And we created a model where we actually got paid half our money up front, like literally when you sign the contract, which is pretty good. We got paid our other half of the money when we delivered it, and then there was an ongoing, recurring revenue stream as a part of that. But those guys made the difference when we got acquired. We were able to kind of use them in a different way. I used our accounting person. We used our lawyer on the other side. So who you pick and who you put in there, like getting somebody who can pick up the phone and make an introduction for you to the CIO at Starbucks or the CEO of Tom's Shoes, that's pretty helpful. So at the end of the day, I will say these are the things: style, skills, sacrifice, and stamina. You have to be willing to challenge the status quo, which is probably one of my favorite things. I even have it it's actually on my startup screen on my computer. And leading by example. But I will say, when I say shoot for the moon, like Elon Musk, who I personally love, and some of you may love him, you may hate him. Everybody has their own way of looking at Musk. But act decisively and not recklessly. And Musk sometimes acts recklessly, but most of the time, he acts decisively. Leadership. I'm gonna say that leadership comes from being uncomfortable because it forces you to look at yourself and to look at the things around you and make decisions. It truly isn't about being in control, but it's about empowering other people. The goal is to have them be better even when you're not there. That's really the measure of whether or not you're a successful leader at the end of the day. These are some resources, and by the way, I'll share the slides with everybody. So these are just some things that you can use. If you really want to learn more about raising money, I've given this keynote speech multiple times called The Perfect Pitch. It's on SlideShare. You can download it. It'll actually tell you exactly what your deck should look like. And outside of that, I'm going to end with this statement from Pink, who I also happen to love. You can move mountains, but you can't move them by whispering at them. So thank you very much. I couldn't get through everything today, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I'll be around all day today. I'm happy to have lunch with people, answer questions that you have. So if you guys want to come up, I believe they've got a microphone here for questions.
Yes. First of all, round of applause. I'm not going to let you off the hook. That was too great. Awesome. Wonderful. Okay, so yes, Q&A. Again, don't miss your shot. Incredible, brilliant, wonderful entrepreneur who's come here to graciously give all of her life knowledge and wisdom with you. If you have a question, come to this microphone. That way we can all have a conversation. Everybody can hear you. And we'll do that. Okay. Anybody? Any takers? Questions? Go, please. I see a hand waving.
Oh, we were looking at the camera, sorry.
Oh, you were looking at the camera.
But I was also paying attention, yes.
This isn't school. You're fine. The camera's fine. Yeah, question. We have a question here. Come on up. Yeah, come on. Let's do person here, line here with me. Great. Go. Yeah, right ahead, please.
Yeah, think about it. I would say to you guys, if what you're doing, if you get up and look at yourself in the mirror every day and go, would I want to do this today? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, if you build a great company, whether we like it or not, that is going to be the biggest part of our legacy. People will remember us for that. Do something that you're proud of. Do something that you really care about. At the end of the day, that's why I started Prowess Group, the company I have today, because I said I could go build another technology company, or I could build a company that actually makes an impact on other entrepreneurs that will allow them to impact hundreds and thousands of more people. And that's my goal. Go ahead.
Hi. Question I had for you is, when you're building all these different companies and coming up with lots of ideas, are there any particular way you kind of evaluate your ideas? Like, are you following your interest, your passion, like some stuff you're interested in? Like, how do you know, like, this is something I want to do?
So, yes. So I have, the little dollar college book, brown books, the college notebooks that you have that are like, you buy them for like $1 at the dollar store? There's the white paper books. I have about 40 of those on a bookshelf. I'm not lying. And so when I come up with an idea, I actually write it in there. And I keep them kind of categorized, and then I will go back and I'll look at those. Because it's like, did it matter to me today? Will it matter to me tomorrow? Because building a real company, it's got to matter to you more than for like 5 minutes, right? It can't be like the flash in the pan thing. So I use those, and I kind of categorize them. So I have some like that are in the security space, and I have others that are more like social entrepreneurship, which I've actually had a company that did civic crowdfunding, right, on the other side. So I'll do that, and then I'll go back and kind of iterate through those ideas. Prowess Group, the company I have today, actually happened because I was an investor in a company called PartPick out of Atlanta that had $1 billion idea and got sold for pennies on the dollar to Amazon. So great, they had an exit to Amazon. But the reason they didn't get where they needed to go, even after winning TechCrunch Disrupt, winning Rise of the Rest and everything else, is because it was an entirely black team led by a black female. And I was like, this is wrong. And even when I made introductions to them for VCs and I saw kind of what came back, like, I can't have that. We've got to fix the problem that we have with how entrepreneurs are able to succeed. With my company, the Prowess Group. But it's not an advertorial for that, so I can talk about that. But like, come on, I want to answer you guys. So did that answer?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello, and thank you for speaking. Great speech.
Thank you for having me.
So you've worked in a lot of different industries. How do you find yourself learning the expertise needed to succeed in all these different fields?
So I haven't worked in that many different industries. So outside of technology, outside of that, I've actually owned 3 transportation companies, which sounds kind of crazy, and just by happenstance, the racing car picture, that's actually me. So I'm an avid scuba diver and a race car driver. And so it really was about personal interest. I kind of grew up in that space in the transportation. My dad worked in that space, so that was easy for me. Technology, it actually kind of happened by accident. The reason I actually went to work at Apple is because my minor was in graphic design. And they were coming out with a product, right, that needed to be sold to graphic designers. So it was kind of a perfect fit. And I just loved it. And honestly, most of it is self-taught.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi. People are obviously really important to you, and you talked a lot about helping people grow and bringing people on your team and trying to empower them. But how do you choose those people to bring on? Are you looking at qualifications, coachability? What is kind of the key factor that you always look for someone on your team?
I want somebody who's different than me. So I want someone who has different skills than I do. I want someone who wants to change the world. And honestly, attitude and aptitude are far more important than all of the other pieces, because I can't teach that, right? I can teach you a process, I can teach you about technology, you can go learn about other things. So to me, I really want somebody who cares as much as I do about the problem I want to solve, but who has skills that are very different than mine.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Nick Nastasi. I just wanted to ask, what's the one word of advice you would wish you could give yourself at the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey?
Trust but verify.
I like that. I like that a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name's Jake. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
When you find yourself in some sort of adversity or interpersonal struggle, what's the way you kind of like step back, assess the situation, and kind of surmount over it, or find the answer you're looking for? Because I feel like you said a lot of people face adversity every single day or some sort of personal struggles in their companies and their startups. So how do you kind of look to surmount over that?
You know, I think everybody's personality is a little bit different, and so you have to think about it. I'll give you I won't tell you my whole life story today, but I lost my dad when I was 16. My mother completely fell apart. I ended up moving my younger brother in with me when I was only 18 years old, who I took care of him until he graduated, so I'm the oldest. And I think that when I'm thrown into a situation where someone has to step up, it's just my natural inclination to do that. I understand there are not other people who are like that, and so it's not an introvert or extrovert thing, because by the way, I live with an INTJ. I think it's more about finding, you take whatever time you need to process through that, but to say, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen, right? How do I overcome this? And what happens if I make this decision or that decision, right? Because there's generally a fork in the road. What happens if I go this way? What happens if I go that way? And you have to weigh those differences for you personally. I think when it comes to your staff or when it comes to people, because like hostile takeovers, that's pretty horrible. You know, basically I gave my cell phone number to 500 people. Right? I'm like, here you go, call me if you have a problem. So I think it's those kind of things, and you have to figure out what's kind of right for you. How much of yourself are you willing to put out there? That's a personal decision.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey,
Hi.
I have two short questions. The first one is that since you have worked with successful founders and unsuccessful one as well, I guess, like Steve Jobs, what is the one main key trait that differentiates a successful founder and an unsuccessful founder?
Relentless execution, no doubt. It's that tenacity and relentless execution. It's like I have a vision and I'm going to find a way, because there'll always be obstacles. It's finding the right path. And when I say relentless execution, if you try this or you try that scenario, kind of like we were talking about earlier, you'll find a way, right? We had a company, business leaders, we had people from 27 different countries. When you think about different languages and things like this, one of the problems sitting in a room like that is somebody will be speaking in a different language and you think maybe they're talking about you. So we instituted a policy, and we said you may only speak the native language of the country in which you are in, or English in the hallways. You can speak whatever you want behind closed doors, we don't care. But you can only do this here. Because it became a problem when we were getting complaints, right? Like so-and-so's talking about it. It's not really the case, right? But it's like, hey, let's do that.
Relentless execution?
I'm sorry?
Relentless execution, like you keep on executing, is that was your answer?
Yeah.
Okay. The follow-up question is that there are a lot of opportunities in this decade from blockchain to AI and all of these things. So how do you pinpoint? Because as an entrepreneur, you see all these opportunities and you do not want to miss on any one of these. So I think about 20 of these things every day. So how do you pinpoint one and go in that direction, because you can't do all of them at once?
What you care about, right? So blockchain is a great example, right? It can be applied to a million different things. But it's what you care about, because every day you're going to have to get up and you're going to have to face your people. You're going to have to go out and sell what it is that you're building. You're going to have to stay motivated to work, I'm not kidding, 18 hours a day, right? Pretty much 7 days a week. Bill Gates had a saying, he didn't take off a day, not one day, for the first 5 years he started the company. to do that, you have to really care about what it is you're doing. So it's not about, hey, there's a new technology or there's this or that. It's like, what problem do you want to solve? And then find the technology that will let you do that.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Trey Murray. Hey, my question is, as you're growing and scaling your business, you're looking to go get funding. What are some of the biggest challenges you've seen?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Yes, I said as you was going and looking to get funding, what are some of the biggest challenges you've seen?
Right up in there. You got it.
I was asking, as you're trying to grow and scale and you're going to seek funding, what were some of the biggest challenges that you've seen?
Oh, okay, got it. I'm a girl. I would say that for any minority, though, so it doesn't really matter, right? I think that really the biggest challenge is, first of all, if you're going to go get venture funding, you need to have $1 billion idea. You need to build $1 billion company. And that's just math. That doesn't mean you can't get funding other ways, let's be really clear. But for that, that's a requirement. It's also about understanding how to answer the questions that you're going to get asked. And that's kind of part of what we're doing with the Prowess Group too, is teaching people like, hey, how should I respond? Like, what should I do? Because how you answer matters, even though the outcome might be the same. So I think it's those kind of things, like understanding what the process is like, going through that. How do I divide it up? How do I set my company up in the beginning to make sure that it's set up in a way that I actually could get funding in that way if I needed to? But there's other alternatives, from equity-based crowdfunding to loans to angel investors. There's a ton of different ways to get capital to grow and scale your business. But if you get customers, I will tell you my personal viewpoint is, if you get customers, the traction will take you where you need to go. You don't have to have 1 million customers. And if you're going to go raise capital, having a few customers to prove that people will pay for what it is you're building, that matters more than anything. Because they have to be able to see that your company can go where it needs to go. Does that answer the question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we have time for one more, I think.
And then, by the way, I will stay around, so I'm happy to have other conversations with people.
Hello. So I recognize that one of your main emphasis points was courage. Is there a point where someone can have too much courage, and what would that look like?
Yes. So I mentioned my co-founder, who I ended up testifying against in a court of law. We created this company. The company had the ability to change the industry, completely change the industry. But he was the CEO, and I was the COO. He owned more shares than me. And he made the decision to lie to one of our business partners, to our board of directors. I can't do that. The one thing I've learned, guys, don't lie. Just don't lie. If you have to omit something, fine, right? You don't have to tell everything to everyone, but do not lie. You'll never be able to keep up with the lie. It will come back to bite you. And so for me, that was super disheartening. I mean, I literally, went home for a week, and he's like, we're going to have this at the board. I'm like, I'm not doing it. And so the day before the board meeting, I walked in, and I said, I'm leaving, and I packed up my office, and I walked out. And his reply to me was, you can't do that. You have 1.7 million shares, you can't do that. I'm like, I can do whatever I want. I'm not going to do this, so that's my option. And it's a weird thing, because I cried, I was angry, I threw things, I drove really fast, got a really bad speeding ticket at 120 miles an hour. Right, there were a lot of things I did before I got to that point. But my question I asked to myself was, if I don't walk away, because walking away from millions of dollars is hard, I don't care who you are. How will I go forward after that? And so it was a tough decision, to do that and to walk away from something I poured 3 years of my life into. But it was the right thing to do.
Awesome. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much. Okay, I think that's all the questions we have time for. Ladies and gentlemen, Joy Randels. All right. We have a busy day. Busy day, fun stuff, great things. This last year was pretty crazy. This last 2 years was pretty crazy. Yes, A lot of stuff happened. COVID happened. Politics happened. The world happened. Great. Yes, the world can impact you. It can be disruptive. We also can disrupt the world. That is why it is so important that we're talking about being agents of change. Like having that locus of control where you believe that you impact the world rather than just the world impacting you. Anybody read Count of Monte Cristo? Watch the movie? No, go watch it. You must say to the storm, do your worst, for I will most certainly do mine. I love that quote. That's such a baller entrepreneur quote. Tell that to your investors next time they say no. All right, so we have a lot going on, wonderful conferences. We want you to go forward with this heart, but also with these sharp minds. I'm loving the questions. Keep that going as you go through these sessions. We're about to go into our breakouts to talk more about how do we as entrepreneurs create these world-changing solutions, connect the dots, do cool stuff. Today and tomorrow, we have a mix of keynotes, pitch competitions, award ceremonies. There's lots of different concurrent receptions. So yes, go make a path that's right for you. The keynotes are going to be designed to engage everybody. All these different sessions, we built different tracks that you can check out. My co-founder and business partner, Landon Phillips, teaching that session on creativity and innovation from the head of innovation. He's a cool guy. Little shout out for him. And then finally, we have the $15,000 global pitch competition. I know that's going on, so somebody's walking out of here a really big winner. I can't wait. We've got the Venture Valley esports game out there. There's $5,000 up for grab for playing a brand new iPhone game, or mobile game, that nobody's ever played for it, so go do that. And then lastly, the entrepreneurship simulation. That's awesome. What a killer place to find potential future co-founders and connections, because you're seeing how are other people going to perform? What complementary skill sets are they going to have? Just like what Joy talked about. One more thing before we get out of here. Everybody have your phones. Normally we say put your phone away in class. This time I'll say get your phone out. Excellent. Please go on social media. So the Instagram, the hashtag CEO Global 2021. Does anybody do hashtags anymore? Any of that? Okay, great. If not, you can tag it at CEO.org. Same thing with Twitter and Facebook. Metaverse, anyone? All right, great. You'll catch up. Don't worry about it. It's fine. It's coming. Don't question it. So lots of great things. But lastly, tonight, let's talk really, really quick about tonight. This evening, we'll be taking shuttle buses to the University of Tampa. Thank you, University of Tampa, at their brand new Loaf Entrepreneurship Center. So 26,000 square feet of space, live music, dinner, hors d'oeuvres. It's a chance drawing for the Amazon Echo. Faculty, staff, everybody welcome. It's going to be a blast, a party. So the festivities tonight will kick off at 6:15. Buses, this is critical, will depart from the front of the Marriott on a continuous loop until 8:30. So everyone, judges, mentors, students, etc., they're invited. Welcome. P.S. to the VIPs in the room. That's faculty, all you cool people. There might be a bar and it might be open for you. So there you go. That's really great. All right, so that's our conclusion of Friday morning events. Ready, break, go do it.
Chitty bag.